Getting us around like what downstate. Nerds need to see. These competitors need to bring their A game and hope to see with the world heavyweight title. The energy is Take the fight to him at some point. To the knee. Lots of damage with an isolated attack on the challenger's legs. I love this urgency. Take the fight to the strength, and I will decide the distancing of
a successful hold defense for him tonight.
In the U.S. government. But speaking there about the big breaking news that affects this country today on trade, the signature policy of Trump's first term may have been the southern border wall. Now he's talking about building a tariff wall, outlining his plans to bring in 25% tariffs on Canada effective tomorrow, 10% on oil and gas, a lower rate of tariff on that sector not coming till February 18th. But talking about China, Canada, Mexico, the European Union, sectors such as pharmaceuticals, steel, copper, aluminum, microchips, saying nobody can stand up to us because we have the biggest piggy bank, and casting back to a time in the 19th century where he believes the United States was at its wealthiest because of the tariff policy in the years following the U.S. Civil War. Listening in on all of this has been the chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton. Rosie, we started getting the alerts on the wires. Nothing Canada can do, nothing Mexico can do, nothing China can do. Here we are. What do you make now? We've heard from the president himself.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things stand out there. The first, one of the things that you talked about earlier, that he says that this will cause only short-term disruption to the United States, that ultimately it will not cause inflation and that Americans will benefit. I'm not sure what short-term Donald Trump means, but I would suggest it's a little longer than he thinks. The reduction of the tariff on oil, he said probably will do it a little less, 10%. I don't know what that indicates. Is this set in stone or is this not set in stone? And then finally, that point that you made there, that this is about building a wall of tariffs around the United States, that free trade is dead, according to Donald Trump, and that he's coming for everyone to try and extract money to build up the American economy. This is, as we were pointing out, this is no longer sounds like a negotiating tactic. This now sounds like an ideologically driven economic picture that the president is trying to put into place as quickly as possible, and that is extremely disappointing for this country and will be incredibly difficult to manage. Again, though, I would say we still don't have anything written down.
No,
and so we need to get a little bit more clarity on, is the 25% on everything? When he talks about some of the steel, aluminum, copper, when he talks about oil and gas, how broad is this? How quickly is this going to be put into place? Those are some of the things that I think we still need to figure out here.
Yeah, and it sure sounded like staggered implementation, different dates, different rates, different times. But, if you look at all of the NAFTA countries, you look at China, you look at the European Union, That is a massive share of the global economy he's declaring a trade war on, and all of the G7 with the exception of the UK and Japan. And who knows what's the source of that.
And the United States is dependent on China, on Mexico, on Canada for most of its goods. Yeah. So where will the goods be coming from in the interim? I think that is a question that doesn't maybe have an answer, a clear answer, but certainly American consumers are going to feel this if it goes into effect very quickly.
Okay, we're going to talk to someone who's been through this before. That's Flavio Volpe. He's the president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association and a member of the Prime Minister's Council on Canada-U.S. Relations. Flavio Volpe, we've heard a lot of things from Donald Trump. That was pretty explicit about what's potentially coming tomorrow. Well, what's your reaction to what we just heard?
More of the same, and I think we all sit here and listen to him ramble on. He sounded like President Putin there. It's mass chaos and a whole bunch of things. He threw in tariffs on oil in the same conversation that he was talking about millions of people, young people dying at the front in war in Ukraine and Russia. I think we all have to breathe out when he speaks. He throws it all in there because we're listening. It does not have a relationship with the truth. And the thing that matters is, if he's got something coming, like that executive order said that we've got something coming, or his threat of something coming, when it comes in a legal instrument. Let's analyze it. Let's respond accordingly. And the people that we haven't heard from are from American consumers and industries that are going to pay for all of this. And we saw the Dow Jones take a little bit of a hit today. I think that if he puts a 25% tariff on cars and parts on February 1st or March 1st or February 18th, whatever the date is, you should have me on about 7 days later, because nobody in the USA will be making cars or parts or rolling out those raw materials. And probably the market will tank, and probably those silent American stakeholders would be in court looking for emergency relief.
Well, Flavio Volpe, that's a date to come back at any point once we do see the legal instrument. And I completely take your point that he says so many things which have no relation to the truth, to use the phrase that you have said. But in some ways, it doesn't sound like it matters, right? You heard him say that this mythical period from the 1870s on, where there was no income tax and you got revenue from tariffs, that's the richest they've ever been, sort of ignoring the post-Second World War, I guess, economic boom that America and Europe and everybody went through. He says tariffs don't cause inflation, they cause great success. Whether it's true or not, it seems what he believes and what he's prepared to act on.
You know, one of the things that we all have to grapple with, and whether that's domestic interests or foreign interests here that partner with the United States, is none of us has ever modeled that the American president would be belligerent to American prosperity. What he talks about,
launched his Tesla Roadster into orbit around the sun back in 2018 as a test flight.
After about 15 million years or so, it will most likely collide with one planet or with the sun.
Since then, the number of deep space missions has increased.
Our garbage doesn't disappear, even in space.
A concern Samantha Lawler has raised for years, most recently when a piece of SpaceX rocket crashed down on Saskatchewan farmland upon re-entry. In deep space where the Tesla is orbiting, there's a different worry.
It is less of a hazard to drop on us, but it makes it harder to find the asteroids that are also orbiting the sun.
Some astronomers estimate about 1,000 objects orbit the sun. There are databases that track some of the paths, mainly NASA probes, but there's no international registry that groups have to follow.
Everyone's going there, and so we need to take a new look at how we govern deep space, how we regulate it.
Experts say it's important to get the numbers right when looking at how many asteroids could pass near Earth, and junk in the way makes those statistics murky. Heather?
All right, Allison, thank you for this. That is our newscast for this Friday. Thank you for joining us. I will be back later tonight with CTV National News at 11 for ongoing coverage of Canada's top stories. Of course, you can tune in anytime to the CTV News channel. I'm Heather.
Remain calm, and then respond in the rule of law. Have the markets respond. I'll tell you, anybody who's a shareholder of an American car company, the day after these tariffs go through, will see the value of their holdings drop. Institutional shareholders will see that. That market response is going to force the words. to either have their executive take action or find new executives. And I noted that he keeps talking about America being back in all of these different sectors. Didn't have any of those leaders at the inauguration when he set up that Politburo-esque stage behind him. He had the tech bros, and he had his family, then he had his nominees. And so I think with Cotton, we should be real with ourselves on what we're saying. When you see him speak like that, call it out, at least to yourself, for what it is. It's provocative chaos meant to put us on our heels. You go on your heels. We will deal with what comes.
Okay, Flavio Volpe, the president of Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, joining us here on what is a special extended edition of Power and Politics. U.S. President Donald Trump and his White House press secretary making clear that they're going to impose tariffs on Canada in some form tomorrow, 25%. Is the number he said, though the threat of a tariff on Canada's oil and gas sector coming in later than tomorrow and at a reduced rate, probably of 10%, is the latest from the president today. Flavio Volpe, take your point very clearly. It's all very calm and rational, and fact-driven analysis, which I don't know if that applies anymore in the Donald Trump world. He has broken free from the laws of political gravity, in everything that happened on January 6th and his convictions, and he's escaped all legal and political accountability to come back to the White House for a second term in spite of everything. And he looks at the way tariffs interact with the U.S. economy, the world economy, because he's going after Europe and everybody now, and he just sees it differently or interprets it differently than you and just about everyone else do. So I appreciate, don't get on your heels, but when you get walloped by a 25% tariff, it's hard to keep your balance.
Look, I represent companies that do not have this flexibility. Oh, by the way, we're just going to supply it out of Kentucky. The auto sector is going to get hit really hard. They don't pay me to panic. They pay me to think about, what are the alternatives? Can we find other markets? In the short term, no. Can you find legal relief? Maybe. Should we genuflect? Go down to Mar-a-Lago and beg for mercy? Absolutely. If we are in a post-free trade world, we're all big boys and girls. Let's figure that part out. This is a guy that's demonstrated that he'll make a bet even with a bad hand. And so if we agree that he's not going to change and he's not going away, then we all have to have a different resolve. Canadians are going to feel this. Every single model, every single guest you have on says, this is going to cast us into a recession. But let's accept that we're going to be in a recession and that we can't get out of this first step. And let's think about what that next step is. Ultimately, Americans have to stand up for themselves and their own interests. Some of those will align with us. It'll be, hey, by the way, your tariffs on Canada is now giving us runaway inflation, and it's stopped our growth. And let's, when that happens, and in my business, that'll happen in a week. Then let's work with them, with him. Right. And if he is unconventional, well, let's accept that, and let's work unconventionally as well. There's a lot of people who say, we should be panicked. We should find a different way. What's that way? Some reporter just asked him about Europe, and he just came up with a Europe tariff.
Well, he has threatened that before. So, yes, it is new in this context, but he has threatened it earlier. But yes, he does make these threats, though. He didn't say Europe tomorrow. He did say Canada tomorrow and Mexico tomorrow. So I question Flavio Volpe before we let you go. I mean, you're talking about calm and acceptance and a logical response to whatever this is, which is what the federal government is kind of saying as well. But you've already seen there from President Trump, at least in what he's saying, 25% for everyone, 10% for oil and gas. You've been in the rooms as you talk about how to hold things together and have a united response. If you start supplying different standards and different carve-outs and different measures against different sectors and different regions, what does that do to the ability to hold Team Canada together when it hasn't been that easy, even before he got the job and even before he's imposed a single tariff on anyone?
Well, look, you're talking about what the political challenge will be, and I think that we all have to decide how much this Canada project means to us. We're 168 years into it, and automotive is not going to be asking for a permit. We're going to take it on the chin, and then we're going to work with Michigan, who's going to take it on the chin, and Ohio and Indiana. Some other industries and some other regions have different dynamics, and I totally understand that. I think it's incumbent on us to be patient with them, and if they stray a little bit, work to bring them back. This is like getting locked in a cage with a tiger. The tiger will eat. But if you're going to have any chance, if you panic, you're not going to be able to think about that one move or that second move or that time that you can buy that you can figure it out. Panicking and pushing different parts of Canada away, different industries away, or saying you should be the one. We have this immutable card in oil and gas. I don't think anything's immutable here. And I think we should be also modeling that we may disappoint each other over the next few days and weeks and months. But if we believe in a strong, independent Canada, then we should support the federal government in its negotiation, and then be tough with the federal government on what our expectations are. He is looking for weaknesses between his allies, and he's looking for cracks in the Canadian resolve, and we shouldn't give it to him.
Well, Flavio Volpe, I don't think I want to be in a cage with a tiger, no matter how much time I had to think about it. But I get the sense that I end up working tomorrow, and if we get the clarity in the legal instrument, we're going to give you a call. I want to thank you for being here. That's Flavio Volpe, the president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. Well, the big news, and the reason why we came on early and we're staying on until 7 o'clock without commercial, is that U.S. President Donald Trump says a 25% tariff is coming tomorrow on Canadian and Mexican goods, as well as a 10% tariff on China, on top of existing China tariffs. And he says there is nothing those countries can do about it.
We have big deficits, but as you know, all three of them. And in one case, they're sending massive amounts of fentanyl, killing hundreds of thousands of people a year with the fentanyl. And in the other two cases, they're making it possible for this poison to get in. They have big deficits. Possibly very substantially increasing. We're going to see how it is, but it's a lot coming to the United States. As you know, we have about a $200 billion deficit with Canada, getting close to $200 billion. They've treated us very unfairly. And I say, why should we be subsidizing Canada? Wonderful. I have so many friends in Canada. It's a great place. We're not looking for a concession. We'll just see what happens.
All right, that was President Trump speaking in the Oval Office a little over an hour ago. The CBC's chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton, is here with me. Rosie, Flavio Volpe, remarkably calm, gone through this and into negotiations before. But he just spelled out the knock-on consequences of what this could be, and they're pretty stark, even as he delivered it very calmly, but just where things could be economically, nationally, and politically.
Yeah, but I am struck by and I realize he's paid to remain calm.
Yes,
but,
as you said.
but I am struck by a couple of things he said there, and it's something that our colleague Aaron Wary has written about and others have written about, and that is the idea of economic patriotism and nationalism that could be born out of this, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea that we are wrong to think there is nothing we can do. And I think that is the kind of message that you would expect to hear from the government when they decide that they know enough to speak. There are things that we can do. What we are going to have to struggle with is counter tariffs going to be enough? How can we use the revenue lifted from counter tariffs to support Canadians through this? What kind of transitions would be needed? And then I would just point to the other issue, and that is the issue of time. Donald Trump has a 4-year term. This is his last mandate, as the lost tense now. And he has probably 18 months, right, before midterms. So that is partly the reason why his agenda is so ambitious and he's moving so quickly. So there is some time that works in our favor in some ways, right? Like the kind of changes he's talking about are not going to take place over a 6-month period of time. The problem is that our economy in 6 months could be devastated. Yes. And I don't know how we fight back at that point. So anyway, I'm looking for a little bit of light in everything we're seeing today, and I think Flavio Volpe brought some of that. But the challenge is to turn this also into an opportunity, to not just sit back and take it, as it were, but to find a way to fight back.
It was interesting. I spoke with Beatha Currency from the TD Bank the other day, and she said it could be like 6 months before this all works its way through. But at the end of that 6 months, it's bad, right? It's 10% unemployment. It's GDP
1 million people out of a job, yeah.
So I know on the outside you've got the midterms. So if you're the Canadian government now calibrating this response, you've got to look at industries, sectors, states, congressional seats, Senate seats that are up in that cycle and hammer that with whatever you can to try to threaten his control of the House and the Senate.
Yeah. And we are going to have a different prime minister in 5 weeks' time, and potentially an election in 6 weeks' time. So we're supposed to do all of this in this kind of instability, with this kind of upheaval, with a prime minister, no matter who wins, who has never done the job before and may not know what he's doing, he or she is doing. That's the reality that we're in.
Yeah, I can do a lot of laundry. It's going to be that busy. All right, Rosie, thanks so much. I'm going to bring in another guest. Joining me now is Ontario Liberal MP John McKay. He is the co-chair of the Canada-U.S. Interparliamentary Group. Mr. McKay, it's good to speak with you. What are your American colleagues in your Interparliamentary Group saying to you about the state of the relationship between our two countries?
Well, in truth, not much. When we were down there about a week ago, the Republicans, of course, were quite pleased with themselves, but because they were in the Canadian Embassy feeling a bit awkward, and our Democratic colleagues were somewhat depressed, as might be reasonable to expect. So as long as the Congress is supine, and as long as the Senate is supine, and the Supreme Court and all the tech bros, it's pretty frustrating trying to access new channels in the United States.
So not saying much on the specifics. I mean, presumably because they don't know, I would guess. I mean, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, did an interview. He didn't seem to know what the president's plans were on tariffs. But with what they do say, John McKay, are any of them saying the things that Donald Trump was just saying, that the U.S. was at its wealthiest sometime after 1870 when it relied on tariffs, and tariffs don't cause inflation, they cause great success? I mean, is that an orthodoxy, or is that a one-man view of things?
Even the most wildly enthusiastic Trump mega Republican doesn't repeat that because even they would know it's complete nonsense. There is, however, a very depressing atmosphere in Washington where everyone is afraid of what he might do next, particularly what he might do next to them. So the conversations that we do have, while personally quite civil, don't actually lead anywhere.
They're what, completely beholden to the power he has over the party? I mean, the MAGA movement has manifested itself in many ways inside the Republican Party, and that if you don't completely toe the line with Donald Trump, Elon Musk and people unleash on you on social media, and then when you're up for your nomination in your primary, you get hammered there, right? I mean, is that essentially what you think is driving the fear that they won't be able to hold on to their positions and their jobs if they say anything contrary to the president?
Well, as you know, Dave, I've been going down there for quite a number of years and have developed a few friendships. And one congressman, his name I won't mention, was on the floor of the Congress, this is a few months ago, and saying some pretty provocative things about Canada, particularly with respect to our defense movement. And he said, besides which, I'm meeting with a bunch of Canadians this afternoon, and boy, am I ever going to tell them. So we trooped in his office, and he said, well, I guess I know what you want to talk about. And so I said to him, I'm trying to repeat his name. I said to him, a few months ago, I probably would have agreed with you, but, you know, what you said was completely inaccurate, and you know it's inaccurate. So then, you know, just a few minutes later, he revealed to us that he was going to have to spend $1 million on being primaried.
Yeah.
And we all went, oh, okay. Now we get it. So that was his preoccupation. He's going to spend $1 million on being primary, and then have to spend another $2 million on being reelected, which he was. And we met him at the embassy. That's the world in which they live.
Well, and that is the challenge, right? As the primaries become so contested and the dominance of one person on a party is so profound.